Gautam.
And we've come to the final stage of the webinars today, right? And we want to focus on creating a killer pitch deck. So we moved from, how does a founder think to, what do investors think or how their mindset is. And then we moved into, how should we approach an investor pitch very similar to a sales pitch, right? So VG ran you guys through it. And then we also ran through, the art of storytelling itself, right? The business storytelling itself in terms of how it's important for, for founders. And then this is where I would say, in my view, one of the most important sessions for all of you, this week, in terms of how do we create that killer pitch deck, which ultimately is going to be that fine line between making it to, the grand versus not, right? So we have Mohit Bansal today, founder of DeckRooster, a serial entrepreneur, and in fact, he's been instrumental in being part of various ventures, in the startup ecosystem, over the last decade or more. In fact, he was instrumental in being part of, India's first co-working space. And I would say in the last 5 to 6 years, he's probably had a hand in the successful pitch deck of many startups that have, raised funding successfully, right? So in fact, some of the startups that Mohit and his team have been helping in terms of putting together a nice story, or if I have to say, uncovering the story, that you guys have and making it sound a lot more special, right? Whether it's a sales deck or investor deck. A lot of his clients include startups that have been funded by Goldman Sachs, Axel, Khosla, Sequoia, IDG, Bloom, right? Even Y Combinator. A lot of the top funds that have funded startups have been through, Mohit's guidance. So, which is where we felt it was extremely important for us to, bring Mohit himself, address you guys on how to make that, killer pitch deck, which impresses all these investors. So, Mohit, the floor is yours. And just to set a context, we have all the founders here, and they would love to know how, post the session from you, they could go back to their existing pitch deck, fine tune it ahead of, the actual pitch that's coming up. Of course, like you always say, what is important here is the story, and it's not just in the pitch deck. It's also about how they, bring out the story when they pitch to the investors itself. Right. So over to you, Mohit, and to all of you out there. I think this next 1 hour is going to be very important.
All right. Thank you so much, Gautam. So guys, just to give you a very quick introduction, while Gautam has done that. So I run DeckRooster. We are a presentation design agency. So we work with mostly startups and help them with investor pitch decks and sales decks. Now, what I've seen over the last 5.5 years is that a lot of people make very similar mistakes while they make decks. And having worked with, so we might have had chance to work with some 150 odd startups till date in the last 5.5 years. We have seen many of these patterns. We try to decipher them. We try to see how can we give it to someone, the knowledge that we gathered, how can we give it to someone so that they can do a better job at making a deck. Many times what we struggle with is that I think to make anything fundamentally right or fundamentally good, you have to go back to the basics and rebuild things from there. And many times the process is more difficult than the typical process which is being followed, right? Many of us, when we start building our first deck, our sense is to go find a template or pick up a deck of some other company that is floating on the web, and feel like sort of replicating it, because let's say we like it and we say this seems to make sense, and we start replicating, and suddenly we realize that sort of it is not working out. It is not saying our story that we want to be able to present. And the dilemma stays always. And we have tried to simplify our own ways of making a deck. We have never been able to. We have always felt that the real process of making a deck has always been very, very complex. And we're still learning. Every day we learn, while preparing for this talk also, there are so many things we were uncovering for ourselves. So it's a continuous process for us also. So what I'm going to share is not going to make things simple for you. That I can tell you. So it is not going to be something that you can, go and start changing your slides and say, okay, now I have better slides. It is not going to template that you can follow and say, okay, now I know these are the 20 slides which are required. Let me just go make it. You won't be able to do that. What my objective is here is that you have better clarity. You should be able to see the mistakes. You should be able to see what's wrong with my slides and how do I build a better slide, right? That's all I want to do. So I'm not sharing a template. I'm going to share a sort of a framework or a thinking process of how to think right about a deck. I'm going to try to show some examples also in some of these parts. So we can take questions every now and then. That's perfectly all right. You can throw up a question in chat. We can take the questions towards the end also. So let me just share my screen and get started with this. So one thing before I get started, another thing I want to tell you is that, see, the way to think about your conversation with the VCs is all the more important for an early stage company. Is that, so what are we really doing when we're sharing the pitch deck with or telling our pitch to an investor? You're sort of telling him about an opportunity that exists, right? But the investor, it's important for you to understand that what does he make up his mind on? How does he say whether I want to invest in this company or not? Actually, there are two parts of it. One is just a pure opportunity, which is very commercial stuff. That this is an opportunity and this seems like the right opportunity. Do I want to invest in this or not? But the second part of this whole thing is you, the founder itself, because without you, the opportunity doesn't execute itself. Right? You will add your ability of execution to this opportunity, which will make this opportunity come true. Right? So two things that you need to take care of is the deck as well as you. Right? So everything that you talk about, the opportunity that gets captured in the deck, that's being evaluated. But at the same time, the investor is also evaluating that, is this the person who can execute this, right? Is this the person I want to work with, right? So they are continuously evaluating your typical traits of a founder and typical traits of person I would like to work with, right? I'm looking for continuously that, is this person reliable? Is he trustworthy? Is he credible? Does he have the perseverance? And is he even interesting enough to work with for 5, 6, 7 years? Or is it even, does he have deep insights about this industry that no one else has? And is this guy passionate or opportunist, right? Why is he doing this business? Is he doing this business because this seems like that two guys were sitting and they want to say that, let's do some startup here. And this is one idea we can work on and let's build. Or is it that genuinely which organically came into his life and this was the time for him to just build on this, right? And some of these things actually we all try to evaluate. So I would say that, think of, I don't know if many of you would have had a chance, but let's say if you're thinking of hiring a co-founder for your company, how would you evaluate that guy, right? One part of the whole thing will be looking at, does he bring the right skills on board? Does he complement my skills? But at the same time, the second part will be, is this the right person? Do I like him? Is there an X factor? Is he interesting enough? Is he insightful enough? Does he think through things? Can I trust him? Do I go well with him? Those are the same things an investor will also be evaluating you on. I feel that the more early stage the company, the more weightage to you than the business itself. Because the more early stage the business, that means the more fragile and more fluid the business is. Things are going to change. What is not going to change is you, right? So just keep that in mind, and that gets evaluated from every aspect, from whether how you are making the deck, how you're saying things, the kind of language you use in the deck, right? How much effort have you put in the deck? Even how do you speak when you're speaking, the kind of emails that you send, every single thing that you do, right? This is how you evaluate someone for a co-founder role or a senior management role you might have done, right? You're not just looking at what they're saying, but how they're saying it, right? So with that one thing, I want to start talking about specifically the deck. So about you is onto you. Um, so I have just put together my thoughts in under various questions that you have to think about for your business, and we'll go over those one by one. Um, See, when we build a deck, and this is kind of the way we do the deck, right? I've just tried to simplify for an early stage company and something that we can cover within 1 hour. Um, so I think the first question that you need to sort of cover is about, see, the way you have to think about what you're communicating. Now, the things that we're discussing here are not sort of directly go into the deck, but these are things that you have to think about your business in a way, and then you think about what do I say in the deck, right? So, so one of the things that are, the way we look at the whole problem solution thing, or how do you talk about what you do? First thing we have to question, the first question we have to cover is, what is your business all about, right? The way to think about your business is basically think about that, there are certain people, there's let's say a point A, and there are certain people on this point A, and you are thinking that there is a point B, and you're suggesting that some of these people will move from point A to point B. Now, your business is an enabler for some point A people to be moved to some point B, right? Now, many times we have realized that when people come to us, when we're making a deck, they don't have a clarity on what is a point A and what is a point B, and who are these people who are being moved from point A to point B. So I think one of the exercises that you have to do for yourself is you have to identify and clearly articulate, who are you moving from point A to point B? What is the point A? What is the current situation? It's not a problem. It's not a solution. It's just a situation, right? It's not negative. It's not positive. It just, this is where they are, right? And I'll give you some examples later. But think about this concept of that there are people on point A, and you are asking them to be moved to a point B, right? And that's about it. That's all you have to figure out, right? You can use different terms for all this, and this is what is the current situation, what is the promised land for these people. That's one thing you have to figure out, right? Now, once you've done that, the second thing you have to cover is basically, why does it make sense for people to move from point A to point B, right? So your business is a stimuli, it's an enabler of people from moving from point A to point B. Now, the obvious question is, why would anybody move? I mean, maybe the people don't want to move, the people or businesses or whoever, right? Now, that's where a problem and solution comes in. Now you have to show why being at point A is so problematic. Why is life at A has become more and more difficult and becoming more and more difficult, right? Why is this unbearable right now? So you have to create enough of a contrast between A and B so that I start saying that, I mean, it makes no sense for someone to stay at A. Everybody will move to point B, right? So unless you are able to bring that out to someone else, paint that picture for someone else, it is not going to make sense, because I don't believe in your business until I believe in your product, right? So your point A to point B story is not about your business. It's only about your product, right? You have a product which gets some people from A to B. Now you have to say, why is the life so bad at point A, and why is the life so good at point B, right? And if the contrast is enough between these two, then people will move from point A to point B, right? So that's something you have to cover. I mean, all this, there are different ways to do it. So I'll show you again. I'll cover some example right after my next point. And the third thing you have to cover is, how exactly does it work? How does somebody actually move from point A to point B? This is where your solution gets covered, right? Intro about how you're, of how you're taking people from A to B, and how does the whole thing work basically, right? This is where the details of the solution comes in. Some businesses, some solutions require more details. Some are easily covered in like one single slide. So this is one concept you have to keep in mind, answering these three questions. I'll quickly show you some of this, how this has played out in a pretty good deck of WeWork. So this is WeWork's deck, publicly available. You can all Google, you'll find it. I'm not sure if some of you have already seen it. So for example, they do this here on these slides. So they're saying, millennials are redefining workforce. I'm picking up this deck because this is a business that all of us can relate to, right? So they talk about how millennials are redefining the workforce. Right? Uh, they are more tech-enabled. They're entrepreneurial. They're community-driven. They like sharing. That's their behavior now, right? And which is creating fundamental shifts among communities, which is community. Second is clustering. Third is sharing, right? And they're showing examples of how this is panning out in every kind of industry out there, right? Which is just sort of validation for this concept that millennials are actually redefining the workforce. They're doing all this, right? And these three concepts emerge: community, clustering, and sharing. And plus, the second concept which they're introduced also is the work is changing. They talk about how freelancing and small business formation surging, it's increasing and projected to accelerate. So more and more small businesses, more and more freelancers are coming up. So on one side, the way millennials want to have the kind of work they want to do, the kind of people they are, and the kind of work which is happening, both are changing, right? And hence combine these two things together, and it requires a new kind of ecosystem, which is what WeWork is creating: a space, community, and services, right? So these four slides kind of capture some of the concepts we have spoken about, right? So they could have simply introduced. Now there are 10 other ways to do of why these people will move from point A to point B. We are talking about one reason is because the people itself are changing. Second reason is the work is changing, right? So they're creating enough contrast from A to B that it seems like a very acceptable concept that people will move to this co-working concept, right? This is now easy to understand, but I think a few years back when WeWork was starting, I think, or this is not a starting actually, Series D deck though, but still these are newer concepts, right? So if you have any questions on this, you can raise hand, ask question, or we can move to the next. I'll otherwise move to the next part. You can even ask questions later about this. Then once you've done this, once you've shown that there is a point A, point B, people are going to move from A to B, and here is why, and how are we going to move them from A to B, then you show the proof. Then you show that here are some people we have already moved. Here is some traction, some numbers, some stories, some testimonials. You show all of that. So now I'm validating the product basically first, and I'm seeing then how big is this opportunity, right? From an investor point of view, it makes sense only if there are enough people and enough of an opportunity to do all this. A few things, a few questions to think about again is how many such people or how many such businesses are there. So one thing we typically want to always do is we want to cover bottoms up and not top down. So what I mean is, I'm sure you understand, just quickly explaining that, show the simple maths of how many people are there, how much money can be made of each of these people. That's your size of opportunity, as against picking up a report and saying that, you know, co-working spaces is a $20 billion opportunity. Typically, that's not a good idea. Don't do the top down, always do the bottoms up. It seems more concrete. It also goes back to some of the things like I covered about you, which is about how well do you understand this industry, right? That's very important for me. So bottoms up typically comes only if you understand the industry better, right? Also, some of the things that we spoke about here on why people will move from point A, or why life is so bad at point A, is also because you can only cover those if you deeply understand your customers well, right? So WeWork, the way they have spoken about how millennials are changing and how the work is changing, and they're backing all of this with some stats, this kind of shows some insights into our industry, right? So it's very important to show that I just know this business. I mean, I know this business really, really well, right? So because even so, most investors have their thesis already defined. They know what kind of business they want to invest in, or what categories they want to invest in. Now, if so, largely what they're making a choice of is that if I have 5 different opportunities, 5 different businesses going after this one opportunity, which team do I like the most, right? Which team is the most insightful team? Which team has a maximum perseverance, right? Those are the things which really matter, right? So coming back to how big is this opportunity, how many such people are there, how valuable is it for them? Also, so moving from A to B, now if you have created enough contrast, now we can try to quantify this, that how much is the value for someone to move from A to B? What happens in their life? Do they get more time free for them? Do they get someplace faster like Uber does? Do they have less hassle? Do they save money in an operation in their business that they run? Do they save time in something? Do they have to work with less people? How is it valuable? Quantify it. Um, and how will you make money out of this? Basically, now you have shown there is enough value. There's a value X in moving people from. If people want to move from A to B, they get enough value, right? And you have to show a revenue model which captures enough of this value, right? You can't cover more than this. You can cover just equal or just less than this, right? You have to show a revenue model which captures maximum amount of value off the table. So you're adding value and you're taking off the value. So you have to show how do you do that and how much are you doing that. So in opportunity, I'll show you one more example of a deck that we have recently worked with a company called InstaMojo, again something that you will relate to. So for example, this is an approach that we took because so InstaMojo, all of you would know what they do. Basically, they're like Shopify. Now they work with small businesses who are trying to build a business online. What we wanted to show. So one problem with this industry was that everybody throws around this number. If any of you are working in SME industry, you will have this number of 50, 60 million small businesses, which gets questioned very, very quickly by a lot of people. So the approach that we took is basically we said, forget about all those 50 million number. We don't know how true is that number. Let's look at this way. Let's look at the number of businesses which are listed on, let's say, Google My Business. Number of businesses which are listed on Facebook business pages. How many are there on IndiaMart? How many are there on Flipkart, Amazon? How many are there on GoDaddy? And we're seeing all of them. In the previous part of the deck, we have proven that how all of them are the right customers for us. And we're showing how many are there. And we're saying, let's imagine on the lower side also, let's say there are 10 million active businesses out there, right? That's more than enough to build a large scale business. At the same time, this number is continuously growing. This number is growing because of certain macro trends like rising women entrepreneurship, apna kuch karte hain kind of mindset. Government is also supporting a lot of this. Plus, a lot of these TikTok founders, TikTok influencers are coming now ultimately at one point, once they build following, to start selling something. And that's where they'll need a platform like InstaMojo, right? So this is how we are showing the opportunity. Now you have shown example, you have shown there is A to B, people will move from A to B. Why would they move and how much is the value in that, right? Now we're talking about why do you have the best shot at opportunity? Now see, people moving from A to B, for example, co-working spaces, anybody can build, right? There are 20 other companies who will do it. Why does WeWork has the best shot at that opportunity? That's where you have to, so you have to talk about what are the various alternatives for people to move from A to B. Why would people use you versus somebody else to move from A to B, right? That's where what is your unique selling proposition? What makes you unique? What are your strengths? Or how are you more aligned to a certain set of people? So maybe some people will use some other competition from A to B. But certain people that you are talking about, they will use you more because for them, you are more valuable, right? So that's what you cover. Why do you have the best shot at opportunity? See, some of these things I'm trying to do. So many of us have seen these templates and we get sucked into that idea of that I have to have an opportunity slide. I'm trying to make you understand also that what is the purpose of the opportunity slide? What is the question somebody is trying to get answered of when an investor is looking at opportunity slide? What answer he's trying to get? Now, this is what I'm telling you. This is what they're looking for there. The articulation of this, the content of this will be, you still have to do the hard work of that. The next one is why would you continue to win? So you have shown a product. You've shown that why you are in a good position to do over the competition. But the point is that why would you continue to win in the future also? I need to understand that, one, for that, there are two things which are required. One is how scalable is the business? I can see that you're solving a problem for one person or 10 people, but how will you solve this problem for 100,000 people, right? Is your business scalable? It could be, for some operation heavy business, it could be talking about showing tech-centric operations, right? For example, when you're building a deck for a company like Oyo or a Fab Hotels or something like that, which seems a very operations heavy business, we will want to show that how do they run operations, which are very tech centric, so that today if we are managing 100 hotels and tomorrow if you are managing 100,000, we will be all scalable. We can do this across scale, right? So one is that, can I do this at scale? Second is, will somebody else let me do at scale? Am I defensible? And that's where you talk about that. So defensibility will come from either of the two parts, right? Either it's, or let's say there are a few things that you can show here. One, you can show network effects, right? That as I grow, it becomes harder for someone to leave me. It's like, typical network effects could be about your, for example, Facebook has, or WhatsApp has, right? Those are easier examples to understand. That once I'm in, it's very hard for me to leave. Second could be proprietary data, right? Now, if over time you keep getting data and hence you keep becoming smarter in maybe your suggestions, right? For example, Instagram would know how I interact with that, or maybe Swiggy would know the kind of food I order. They can use that to their advantage. Or Amazon would know my preferences of kind of stuff I want to buy, right? They can show better examples. Third could be simply lock-in. It could be, let's say if you have a CRM, leaving CRM in the first month or so might be easy, but leaving a CRM in a year's time is very, very hard, right? Because there's so much of data inside the CRM that you have put in. You have put in so much hard work. The team is also using it. It becomes hard to get out of it, right? Some of those things. So what makes your business defensible? That tomorrow people will not leave you out. So now you have, as a concept, you have explained that I can scale and I can defend my position. Now you say, how would you do it? Your growth strategy. Now, how do you plan to go to the market and how will you execute? What are the specific things that you will do? What markets will go one after the other? And what is that? Why are you choosing to go this way versus in some other way? If you're using certain marketing mediums, why that and not something else? Again, this goes back to showing deep insights, right? How deeply do you understand the customer and the markets and the marketing methods, that you're making a conscious choice of going one way versus the other. So if you explain all that, and I'm not just looking at answers of I'm saying from an investor point of view, I'm not just looking for how will you market or how would you go to market, but I'm also looking for why that. Because see, unless I see the why, sometimes the what you do doesn't really matter. I don't care about that because I know that in 6 months that will change. But what I care about is when you are making the choice today of this is what you'll do, I want to understand the reasoning behind it. I might just like the reason, and that's fine. 2 months down the line, you say that my reasons, my inputs have changed, and I'm choosing a different path. That's also fine. But at any point in time, I want to work with someone who deeply thinks through things. Right? Are you thinking through every aspect, or is it that you have done so much work, and now if I come up and say, "Hey, how about that part? Have you thought about capturing people by distributing pamphlets?" and say, "Oh, I didn't think about that." That doesn't sound very smart, right? And then also now, so all this is story. Now, what all has been achieved, right? Now you have to show that we are not just talk, we are also going to we're action, and say what all has been achieved. What are the key milestones that you have already established and achieved, and what are the quality of the execution? What has been executed, what has been achieved, and the quality of execution typically comes in terms of cost and speed. That we have scaled this much, not just scaled this much, we have scaled in this less time, and not just scaled in this time, but also at customer acquisition cost of this much, just this, right? Or capital cost of this much. So the quantity of execution and the quality of execution is what you have to show here. This also establishes basically the current value. It helps me understand the current value of the business, because as a concept, everybody is same. But now, if somebody is ahead in terms of what all they have achieved, they're more valuable company than somebody who's slightly behind, right? So if you can present a picture that you're far ahead than where you currently are, that's how we all want to do, right? And typically, our numbers don't tell the right story. Our numbers will only make us feel that we are here, but typically we are here, right? Now, what do you do so that people see this and not just this, right? And then how much will you achieve in next 18 months? So you've done something. Now you're talking about next 18 months, 24 months, typical time frame of a funding round. We talk about so this one should seem significant enough that you are covering enough ground in next 18 months, right? Your revenue projections, some key milestones, um, and also you have to show that while I'm saying that I'll achieve this much, it is again not just my ideas built in the air, castles built in the air. It's also a lot of groundwork for achieving all this in the next 18 months has already been done. Maybe if you're talking about capturing 100 more new clients, then you can show that my sales pipeline already has 50 of them that I'm talking about, right? So how do you show that a lot of groundwork has been done for all of this that we are saying that we will do? Typically, because the graphs will always look like, what has been done is this, what is going to be done is like this, right? And the question is, if you've only done this much, then how will you do this much, right? And that's where you say that this is not truth, because this is only showing numbers, but a lot of groundwork has gone into foundation building has been done till now, and now it allows to scale faster. This is one good format that we have discovered that we use very often for showing. I'll jump to that slide. So this is again a front ka deck, Series A deck. This has been again publicly available. If you Google, you'll find it. So this is one way to show that what will you achieve in the next 18 months. Shows very clearly that on 4 key areas: new platforms, new integrations, new channels, and enterprise ready. What are the various things we'll do over the next sort of 18 months or so, right? And then what does it take to achieve those things, right? So which is the money, how much money are you raising? See, basically why this is also important of how much will you achieve in the next 18 months is that how does an investor look at one more aspect of how I look at that, will this investment make sense or not? That I'm looking at that if I put in the money, can this money grow, let's say 30, 40x? Can this company grow 30, 40x in this 18, 24 months? For 2 reasons. One, the valuation will jump that much. 2, only if you hit that much growth, you'll become eligible for the next round to raise. And because for any investor, any VC or angel, if you don't raise the next round, all this investment is zero, right? So it's important that you show that you're thinking about the next raise right now. While you're raising this one, you're thinking about the next raise, and you're thinking about the milestones to hit for next raise. And that is what you're using this money for, to use this money to hit the milestones for the next round, right? Then to achieve those milestones, how much money are you raising? What will you use it for? So this, what will you use it for, should align with the goals of the 18 months, right? I'm going to use it for product development, and then should show in your 18-month roadmap that you're doing product development. And it should show me that development in the product, that launching this new module or launching this new course will actually help me capture this new set of audience, and hence my revenue will grow, right? And then towards the end, we want to typically close with giving a larger feeling. So beyond these 18 months, if things pan out the way we want it to be, this is going to be much bigger than what you can imagine, right? That's the picture you want to create. So typically we try to close with maybe a vision statement or one larger opportunity, larger than life opportunity that being in this position allows us to be, right? Again, I'll show you, we see that Front has done that very well. So they show this, and for example, this is what we like. So they're saying the bigger opportunity, basically, the Slack proved that businesses are ready to buy good communication tools. They're going after the internal communications market. We're going after bigger opportunity than Slack. So already people know Slack, how big Slack is. It has been proven. It has allowed them to prove their concept of that people are ready to buy good communication tools. And they're saying we will go after the external communication space. It also kind of completely separates them from Slack. So suddenly nobody is thinking about, but Slack is there. They can build it. So they're saying that these are 2 different segments, right? Yeah, so few more thoughts I think which probably didn't get covered there. One is that don't think of any of this as this flow, right? This is not that you have to build a deck in this way. These are questions which will enable you to think more clearly about your business. So So that's one thing. And again, this is not a template; it's more like a framework, as I said. Um, Other thing that we typically also do is, we the way we start building the story is also we figure out what are the key 5 6 messages that we want to transition from us to the investor, right? You can think of it as, let's say the elevator pitch or whatever, but say if I had the power of inception, what are the 5 things that I would want to convince someone um, about my business, right? And it could be simply about. So these are the 5 key messages that you were saying. It could be about how deeply problematic this space is, or let's say the customer has a deep problem, or it's a white space opportunity, or the market is super large around this, and or maybe we're the first ones to come with a very tech driven solution towards this, um, or about we have the best team um, in in the industry to execute going after this problem, or the most experienced team with the right skill sets. We have that, or we have the most capital efficient business in this category. So you have to identify what are the key messages that if I communicate to someone, let's say he's ready to be convinced, he's just saying, tell me whatever you want to say and I'll accept it, on the face value. Then what are those 5 6 messages that you want to convey, which will enable someone to take a decision in your favor, right? And your story, the whole deck, is nothing but using various micro messages is conveying those 5 6 points. So when you're re-evaluating your deck, you have to make sure that those 5 6 messages are sticking back. Uh, I'm not covering anything on the design of the slides. I think there is enough information out there. You have to figure out that for yourself. It's very hard to give you much on that one. But I think what I can tell you is that so so a few things. Basically, one is that so when you think of these 4 5 messages, so here's how you should do. You know, think about all these questions. They'll help you figure out what are the various pieces that I want to cover. Think about the 4 5 key messages that you want to convey through the deck. Now, after this, create a deck with titles only. Tell your story with the titles. So again, if you see let's say this WeWork deck is a good example. If you see the titles, they're not like about us, or the product or the problem or the solution. They're not like that. They're very lame. Those are very lame titles, right? See, the idea is that most of the times when you send a deck, uh, so deck is going to be used in 2 ways. One, it's going to be either used, somebody is on the move, they open your deck on the phone and they say, let me just see if this is interesting. Let me go through, okay, yeah. And they are spending like maximum of 5 minutes on your deck, right? Not even 5 minutes, like 3 4 minutes on your deck. The second is when they will spend like 15 minutes on your deck, right? So your deck has to enable for both. So when they're doing 2 3 5 minutes, then your story has to come out clearly with the title, right? So for example, millennials are redefining workforce. It's a message of the slide. Done. I mean, if I need to be convinced, I'll go to the content of slide and I'll convince myself. If I'm not, I'm okay. I'll move on. Creating fundamental shifts, community clustering, sharing. That's it. Done. Work is changing. Okay, fine. Freelancing and small businesses. Okay, fine. I agree. If I need stats, I'll see the slide and I'll convince myself. But if I'm ready to be convinced, the title should just say what you want to say, right? So that's our title. So that's how you think about the title. The other thing which also enables is this 5 minute deck is also make sure there's enough contrast in your deck so that I know what is important, what is not. So for example, in this slide, I'm saying work is changing. 30% for 30%, 40 million people in 2008, 33%, 45 million people in 2040, and 40%, 60 million people in 2020, right? And I see this, I can leave it out. I know everything else is details, right? It has been designed in a way where I know this is the key points, and everything else is my 20-minute deck, right? Or if, for example, this WeWork is space, community, and services, and I see some visuals, and I move on. The rest is details, right? So make your deck in a way where there are 2 levels. One is quickly skimmable slide with some key details, which I can skim in a few seconds. And the rest is if I want to be convinced, if I'm doubtful about anything, I have enough content on the slide which convinces me about all that, right? So coming back to slide, title should cover the message that you want to convey. The deck with title should convey the whole story. The slide, there should be one large visual always, which kind of covers the key concept. For example, this one. So you're saying rework effects, and there is a visual of flywheel. I get this concept, and everything else is basically details to back this. For example, I might not remember these points of improved marketplace service. Say more members aate hain, more members say better member experience than this. I might not remember this detail. All I remember is WeWork has a network effects going on, right, on supply and demand side. So your slide should be message in the title. The key visual should communicate the message, and everything else is just supporting the key message, right? That's how the slide should be. That's all I have from my side. I'm happy to take any question that you guys might have. Okay, there are a few questions.
Thanks, Mohit. I think there are quite a few questions that have been coming up. I think we should probably start picking up questions from chat. And others, if you have questions, why don't you start putting it up on chat? So, Mohit, a very quick question here. When it comes to the presentation of the deck, what would your 2 cents be with respect to balancing between text versus images in terms of presentation?
See, I don't know how to answer that, because see, if you can stick to a rule of where your key message is in the title, you have one single large visual which communicates your key point, and everything else is supporting message. That should be enough. I can very quickly, I can also show you a bunch of slides that we have put up on our website. So might answer this question better for you. So these are all slides which are there on our website in the portfolio section. So if you see some of the slides, this is how we design all our slides, right? Typically a title here, some visual, which the way we think of all these visuals, see, some of you might not be able to do this, and hence I don't want to push you much into this direction of thinking visually. It is something that it comes very naturally to us, thinking visually. It doesn't come naturally to everyone. But the way we look at all of this is we say, what is the visual I want someone to remember when they go off the deck, right? Because that's the purpose of the visual. Otherwise, I could have sent a document. The reason making these things in visual is because I want it easy to, I want them to find this easy to understand, this message. At the same time, I want to have a high recall message, right? That's the visuals are for. And I don't know if I can give a concrete answer of how much text or not. Just make it skimmable. That's all. Can you skim the slide? Can I just look at the title, look at some key points, and move on, right? This is like every year plastic worth 300 billion are dumped into landfill, and we're just showing quickly all this visually of how they go from one place to another place. Like this is a fairly complex slide. That's a lot of data. 60 billion consumer durable lending market is at 5% penetration. 5 fastest growing lending category. I am not going into detail, but fastest growing lending category, I see one message. Financial institutions are uninterested. That's it. If I don't want to spend any more time, I'm okay with this message and I move on. If I want more details, here is data. Does it help, Kautam?
Sure, Mohit. Of course. Definitely from what you say, a good balance between visuals with text is important.
Yeah.
But do not force yourself to do it if it doesn't come naturally, right?
Yeah,
and one question that I see from everyone, common is, what would be the ideal size of your deck, right? Because different people have different perspectives on what is the ideal, size or number of slides that you should have.
Okay, let me put a question back to you. What is the ideal number of pages in a resume?
So personally, I feel the shorter the better is what I personally love.
Yeah.
A one pager is what I love going through.
Yeah. So you're talking about going through, right? You are on the other side of the table. If we have to make your resume, would you want to make everything in one page, or let's say 2 pages, or 3 pages, or 5 pages?
I think that's a good thought, because if I'm preparing mine, I think I want to stuff in as much as possible, right? I
Yeah.
think that's the
So
conflict that all
yeah.
of us are in.
So see, so I think resumes are a good way to think about it. So what happened was, how did we all build our first resume? We picked up somebody else's because we didn't know how to do, and we followed the template and did it. So see, I think all these templates of resume are very employer friendly. It makes it life easy for an employer to go through all of them. And I can go through 100 resumes in a day if they're in a certain format. Because I know, I say, the way I'm saying there, the employer is saying is basically, I am smart, I know stuff. You don't try to sell me through resume. You just tell me, yaar, what have you done, which college you went to, what did you do. I'll figure out if you are good for me or not, right? The same thing I feel all these templates, the 10-slide decks and all, they do for the VCs. VCs say, dude, I am smart, I know what industries to invest in, I know what kind of business will work, I can evaluate you very, very quickly. So don't give me all the shit. You just put all in one line, put the problem and tell me what are you saying. So it's very VC friendly, but it is not a very startup friendly, right? And hence, so that's one thought on this length of the deck, right? One is that don't go by the templates. They are all VC friendly. They are not startup friendly. Think about what allows you to tell your story better, right? Um, if somebody is not ready to give you enough time, then that may not be the right guy to talk to anyways, right? He doesn't trust you enough. You have to build a trust. So there are certain things that you do about, if you go cold call and reach out to someone and get a meeting, and it's going to be very hard anyways, right? You have to start building all this fundraising process and all much early, start building relationship with the VCs, start showing them, becoming friends, showing them how they have moved from one place to another place. You have to show all that. So that makes life easy for you. But if you want to do justice to your story, it will take more slides than those 10-15 slides, right? That's one part of it. Second is the visuals come into place also here, because if you're making your slides well, the slides become easy to go through. If you look at any of our slides, they're not very hard to go through, right? That's what we try to make sure they're very easy to go through. Each slide is very comfortable to go through. And hence, number of slides may not be the right criteria to look at. The way to look at is that, can you finish your conversation in 20 minutes or so, the key parts of the conversation through your deck. The deck could be 5 slides or 50 slides, but can you complete those slides in 20 minutes, right? If yes, then number doesn't really matter, because see, by reducing the number of slides, what you're essentially doing is you are putting multiple pieces of information into one slide. It is not helping in any way, because you still have the same amount of information. You have to reduce information. You don't have to reduce slides only, right? And that's why most of the slides look very cluttered. Most slides that we see in the world, right? So I would say, figure out what information doesn't help me convey my key point, the 5 key messages I want to convey. That, get rid of those, and everything that supports those key messages has to be in the deck. You have to figure out the flow. You have to figure out the visuals. The number slide doesn't really matter. Just to give you a benchmark, our typical Series A kind of deck will go around 25-30 slides, 30, sometimes 30, a little above 30 also. Our typical Series C kind of deck will also go up to 50-60 slides also. And most founders feel comfortable. They feel comfortable because they fail to tell a story in 10 slides. Nobody can. So that's why we don't look at number of slides that much.
Sure, Mohit. So, just a follow-up question there,
Sure.
right? So, can we probably categorize this into 2 and probably try answering that? There are some decks that are sent out on mails for the investors to read through, and there are some decks that are used for these pitching, right? When they probably have an elevator pitch, or let's say an 8-minute pitch, right? In that case, how would you differentiate on putting together this entire deck? What are key areas of focus that you should have into this version versus that version? Also, with respect to the size and the content, would your answer differ in that case?
Yeah. So, one, you have to always look at it as communication, right? And the purpose of communication. So whether it's an email or a 8-minute pitch or a 1-hour meeting, there is some communication that you want to do to achieve some objective. For example, the objective in an email presentation could be that I want to get a meeting with this guy, or I want to get on a call with this guy. The 8-minute pitch when you're doing it in an event is that I want to get a follow-up meeting with this guy. I want him to say that these are interesting guys, and let's talk, right? If it's a 1-hour meeting, you maybe want to have a meeting with all the partners or maybe some other partner. Right? You have to be more clear about what is the next step. It's like a sales thing, right? You want to get to the next level only. So your current communication has to help you achieve the next level and not get a check, right? Your one pitch is not going to let you get a check. That never happens. It's only going to help you get to the next stage of the relationship, and next stage. One day you will get the check, right? Now, that's one perspective to keep in mind. If you can think about what is my current communication that I want to do to achieve my current objective, and you look at my current limitations. My current limitation is I have only 8 minutes with this guy, or I can't talk to him. I can only send him a deck, right? You look at all those limitations of your communication. That's how we look at and start drafting something. So number of slides may become a little important when you send over email, because there's a tendency of people to look at the number of slides before they start going through a deck and say, oh, 30 slides, we'll go later. Now, but there are two, or maybe one tactic to counter that is to make the deck interesting. If your cover slide itself, the first slide, which is visible in the thumbnail of the email, if that looks interesting enough, I'm more bound to click on it. If your email that you've drafted, if that looks exciting enough, I'm more bound to click on it. If your introduction came through a reference, it came through an introduction, not a cold, then I'm more bound to click on that. I'm bound to spend time on that, right? And plus, if your deck itself is interestingly laid out and the flow is good, it is telling me exactly the key things that I want to know, then I'm going to go through it. What we do is we typically make a main deck and we cull out a teaser deck out of this. We don't want to give out a lot of detail. The teaser is typically used for sharing over email. So we typically would have stuff like, what do we do? What is the market opportunity? Why is this interesting? Basically, all that A to B and all can help you answer the question. How big is the market? And see, some of these things also will vary from industry to industry. In some industries, I'm not questioning the size of industry, size of market. Then I don't need to convince anyone about that. In some cases, I am questioning. Or in some cases, it could be, let's say, if I'm building a deck for Fab Hotels, I have to answer the question that there is OYO. How would you counter that? Or if I'm building co-working space, there is WeWork. How do you counter that? So I have to answer those questions, and those are key questions. And I have to give a teaser of the answer in the teaser deck itself. That we typically keep 6 to 8 slides, typically covering the team, the market opportunity and size, the product a little bit, some key metrics sometimes, and kind of that's about it. Maybe the competitive landscape if it's important. So, but in the 8-minute pitch, what I would suggest is again think about what can I tell? What are the 2, 3, 4, 5 messages that I can tell this guy in 8 minutes that he gives me a meeting, right? Now you have to again think from top down and say these are the 5 messages I want to communicate, and here is how, if I show these 7 slides, these will get communicated, right? Or these 20 slides will communicate these things, and that's about it. So I don't have an answer where it's again like a template approach. I can't give you an answer of saying that cover this is this and that's it. It varies from every business, right? There's no one standard answer for all the businesses.
I get that, Mohit. So just to summarize that, it's more about what can you put in to the deck in that 8 minutes or 15 minutes or whatever time you have, you expect the other person to give you, so that it gives you a follow-up meeting or call or discussion.
Yeah.
Perfect. So I think, in the interest of time, Mohit, we're just going to take one last question or probably squeeze in, one more small question from there. You've helped a lot of startups successfully close a round of funding, with getting their story get narrated. Have you seen a pattern in terms of what has impressed some of the Indian VCs, some of the more active ones, in terms of what goes into a deck, or what aspects of a deck do they actually excite them, or what do they look into more? What has worked for you?
No, not really actually. Because um, see, so we tell everyone that who works with us that, and that's why on our website also you'll see that we never try to take credit of somebody being able to fundraise using a deck, and at the same time we don't take a blame of somebody not being able to raise funds, even if they spent money with us and we made a deck for them. The reason is simple. The reason is that uh, fundraising is complex, and there are dozens of parameters, variables which come into play for fundraising, and some of these variables are within the founder's control, and some of these variables are not within the founder's control also, right? And now if we say that, can your deck uh, make or break the deal? Not really, right? What it can do is it enables you to think through, how do I communicate to someone, and it structures the whole communication. It put together all those variables basically into one single narrative, and say what's happening in the macro trends, what's happening in the competition, what's happening in our traction, what's happening in our team side, what is happening on the product side, and how do I weave a narrative around all this so that it kind of makes sense. It paints a picture where it seems like, yeah, I like these guys. I mean, they seem to be on the right, something right, right? But then there are all these macro factors which are beyond your control. So I have not seen any pattern in terms of what they can do. The patterns I would have seen is again the you part, right? Are you looking like a credible guy? I'm talking about early stage companies. Are you looking like a credible guy? Have you shown perseverance? Are you passionate, or are you opportunist, right? So I don't think there's any pattern from a deck perspective that we have seen.
Not that point. So, Mohit, we'll just take one last question, and then there
Sure.
are quite a few questions as well, but we'll probably take it offline because these are one-on-one questions, very specific to certain startups, right? So, I would probably prefer connecting them to you directly.
Sure.
So, just one last question: if you would like to summarize, for everyone here, you did make a point on how it's important to bring the entire bottoms-up model, right?
Yeah.
So can you just summarize on the bottoms up model, because it would help everyone work on their final decks over the next 24 hours before
Sure.
at least from what they already have on fine tuning it,
Yeah.
and then finally if you could leave your 2 cents for them on the pitch that's coming up in the next couple of days, I think we could sum it up with it.
So on the bottom up, I think it does look complicated one, but it's not that complicated if you think about it. So see, instead of trying to find the size of the market, like going to a report and finding that social media is $X billion opportunity, or taxi market is $X billion opportunity. For example, if you have to do for Uber, we might say that here are the 4 category of people we go after. We go after these young millennials, we go after these office goers, we go after this. Together we feel they are X million people out there. Multiply that by saying we feel that they will use Uber X times in a month, or X times in a year, right? So we have total number of trips that can happen. Um, Multiply that by the amount of revenue that we can generate from each of these trips, right? And that gives you your market size, and that's all. There's nothing else to it. And you can do the same math for your industry. So basically, you are putting the revenue number of the revenue that you are generating, right? So the number of people is coming from the market data. You will find somewhere that how many people are there. You can use different proxies to say these many people seem like there, right? Like we have done for Instamojo, we are saying there are X number of Facebook pages that are there, and then you can show that how often do you think they will use a product like yours, right? For example, in case of Uber, we are saying how often will they will they take a trip, or with WeWork, we might say that how many businesses are there and how many seats on average they will take, or maybe there are freelancer businesses which will take 1 seat, and there are small businesses which will take 5 seats, and so now we have a total number of requirement, and we say what is the cost per seat, multiply that by WeWork's cost per seat, and that is the total opportunity size that they have, right? You can triangulate that by also showing the top down number and say report by KPMG says this is a number of size of the, let's say, co-working space market. So that's how you look at this number. You can put top down also, but put it with bottoms up. Don't just put the top down. it is not very credible, basically, those numbers. Nobody trusts it. It also seems a bit lame to just put that number of top down. So that's about that one. I think on the final summing up on any suggestions, I think I can't sort of harp enough on the fact that deck and all is really good. So one purpose of the whole deck exercise is it is a good exercise for you to also think clearly. So you have to get to better clarity of understanding about your business. The key aspect of the whole pitch, especially at your stages, which I'm assuming is a very early stage companies, is basically the you part. So make sure that you come across. See, if you are not like a person people can like to work with, then you're anyways doomed, right? So if you are, for example, for example, if the business is not solving a good problem, it's not a good solution, then it's anyways doomed, right? Similarly, if the person as a person you're saying you're not good enough, then you're doomed. But you have to figure this out of saying, I'm sure you're good enough for certain people, right? And that's what you have to project. You have to show the true you. You have to make sure that you're not, if you are credible, it should look credible. It shouldn't look non-credible. If you have shown perseverance, you should use this opportunity to show perseverance and not hide it behind, right? Because these are important aspects for an investor to pick up a founder or not pick up a founder, right? So whatever are the key aspects of your personality which you're able to showcase in your business, just make sure that those come out in not a very salesy manner, but they should come out so that somebody can see them and appreciate them. So that's it, guys, from my side. Anything else, Gautam?
Thank you so much, Mohit. I think that was 1 hour of amazing advice, because this is more about diving deep, right? So last 3 days we've been having a logical flow to these entire sessions, and before the final pitches come in, we wanted to end it with yours, which is actually getting into some serious stuff on how do they actually put together the entire flow to their pitch. So Thank you so much for that. I think amazing insights, and definitely, like you said, it doesn't end here. Some of these insights, they would definitely put together for the pitch that's coming up in the next couple of days. But I'm sure a lot of them would love to get in touch with you offline after this pitch.
Sure.
So with your permission, I'll probably ask Vardha to make email connects with those who would like to get in touch with you, separately post this.
Sure, Gautam. And I'm sharing a link here. We have sort of put together a few fundraising resources on the website. These are all publicly available things, nothing proprietary. And this is still quite a lot. I mean, the reason I started doing this is because there's a lot of information out there, but this is still quite a lot. And we still keep coming across some good ones that we have not captured here. But they're slightly outdated, but still, if some of you might find something useful here. So it has a few templates, few articles, few decks. So you can check this out. I've shared this on chat.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Mohit. I think this is going to be very useful for us. Krishna, would you like to take over from here and give the next set of instructions for all our startups with respect to what's up tomorrow and the after?
Yeah, sure. Thanks a lot, Mohit. Thank you, Gautam. Thanks, Mohit, for joining us. We'll move ahead with next round of instructions now. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Krishna. Thank you so much, and all the best to all of you guys. And I mean, don't worry about this one round. I mean, whether this happens or not, because we all like to, in our life, we like to pitch everything down to one single meeting. But there's always the next one coming up, right? So don't lose your heart if one doesn't happen. Right? Keep going. All right, guys. See you later. Bye.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for that. So guys, that brings an end to our webinar session. Thanks a lot for being patient enough and attending all the 4 days of webinar. Thanks a lot for that. So the next round of instructions, tomorrow the bootcamp starts. But before that, we would be publishing a detailed schedule about the bootcamp details. So there are going to be a couple of generic sessions, AMA sessions, Ask Me Anything sessions with people. We have found some legal experts, basics of fundraising, a legal perspective, and a financial perspective will be done tomorrow and the day after. But before all of that, we would request all of you guys to put down all your learning and get ahead and go to those links that shared in the resources page in the mobile app and get to all those resources, fine tune your deck. And we request you guys to submit the first draft by 12 noon tomorrow. And we will also be sending a detailed schedule for all the startups who will be doing their qualifier pitch starting tomorrow post 12 p.m. Right? And we will also be announcing the schedule of the bootcamp details, where, like we said, we have curated some basics of fundraising, legal perspective and financial perspective sessions. And there are also some one-on-one sessions that we have curated. So we will connect individually with all of you guys over an email. And if required, we will also do one-on-one phone call and help you understand if there is any misunderstanding. Right? I hope that's clear. If you guys have any questions, please do let us know in the chat. Okay, let me be very slow. Couple of things to remember. We would request all the startups participating in TNIGC to submit their first qualifier deck tomorrow by 12 noon. And followed by that, we will also be having some broad AMA sessions on basics of fundraising, a legal perspective, tomorrow around 4 p.m. And the day after, we will be having another basics of fundraising, a financial perspective. Both of these sessions will be handled by legal experts. So we will make sure to send a calendar request and we will send you the Zoom link. So you will be pitching across a panel of Head Start senior volunteer members and the TNIGC organizing team. And these guys will be your panel tomorrow, and we will provide you feedback. And the pitching time will be 5 minutes for pitch and 5 minutes for Q&A. And roundabout, you can expect a 15-minute session with each and every startup with the panel. So 12 noon tomorrow, submit your first draft of pitch deck. Later, we will send across the schedule of the bootcamp sessions. Do split your teams and participate in those sessions. If there are any schedules that are clashing between your one-on-one sessions and the broad sessions, split your team across. If you think your CFO or your finance guy needs to attend the legal session and you can go ahead and talk to another one-on-one session that we have curated, you can split your teams and do accordingly as well. We are not going to force you guys to attend each and everything. So it's all up to you. We have put our minds together to see at maximum none of the sessions clash. Where do we send the deck? We will be mailing across from the Head Start ID, and we will be using hello at TNIGC ID as well. So yes. Look, any other questions, guys? The final panel is on Sunday. Yes. We will send you detailed instructions on each and everything over an email as well. You can expect the email before 8 p.m. today. But do make sure that you guys start work on your pitch decks and make sure to send it across to the ID that I have mentioned over there. Any which ways, you will be receiving an email before 8 p.m. with detailed instructions. Any other questions? We will keep the session open for another 5 minutes for questions. So you will have the same time as how. So this is basically going to be like a mock pitch of sorts before you get to your main pitch, right? And this will also act as your qualifier pitch round. So we will follow the same rules and regulations what we will be following with the final jury panel. So it's going to be 5 minutes of your pitch, followed by 5 minutes of Q&A. And here and there, we can have plus or minus 5 minutes as a buffer tomorrow. So overall, we look at a 15-minute detailed call with each and every startup, hearing out your first draft of your pitch deck. We will make sure to do that. Nebisky Labs, Rahul, we will make sure to do that. We will share the panelist details. No, Justin, only by tomorrow, 12 noon, every participant is required to send their the first draft of their pitch deck to us. So it's tomorrow, 12 noon. You can expect an email from us on all of these details that we are saying before 8 p.m. today. All right, guys, I'm going to end this call in another 3 to 4 minutes. Quick details, make sure to send your draft of the pitch deck tomorrow by 12 noon. And starting tomorrow, your qualifier round decks will start. We will send out the detailed schedule for each and every startup saying this is the date that you will do your qualifier pitch and this is the time you will have to be available. So we will send out all the detailed schedule over an email before 8 p.m. today to you guys. Make sure to send us the deck back to the same email ID before 12 noon tomorrow. Nakura, Shravya, like we mentioned, we will let you know the timings will be different for each and every startup. So we will let you know the specific timing according to your startup over an email before 8 p.m. today.